Welcome to the Top Order Podcast, daily roundup of the Cricket World Cup. It's match day 25 in the tournament, England versus Sri Lanka. Angelo Matthews, not having played an ODI for 4 years, comes out of a hiatus to embarrass England and all but book them, hopefully their economy seats home from the tournament. We're going to review the action and look forward to the next couple of days as well on the Top Order Podcast. Stay tuned. So, Baldy, a bit of extra music, probably the only bright part of today, I think, on the pod. What's the neutrals' view of this game? I know you've caught up on the highlights and seen the report. Should England have seen this coming?
Well, that's been a lot of the criticism of England over the last week and a half, hasn't it? That everybody should have seen this coming. Everyone should have seen that England are too old, too slow, don't know what their best side is, can't get their batting right, can't get their bowling right. Look, the fact of the matter is that they've lost a couple of games that they really should have won against Afghanistan and Sri Lanka, and now their World Cup is staring at the abyss of an early tournament exit. But I think the reality is that they're just a little bit off the pace, and they're managing to find ways to get out. They're managing to find ways not to take wickets in the power play. And I think if it were me, I'd be looking at that bowling performance and saying, well, we've lacked penetration at the top of the order. Yes, we were bowled out for 156, but that happens sometimes when you've got this kind of batting lineup that takes risks to try and get to 350, 400. But my question would be to the England side: where's the England side that found the fun under Brendan McCullum in the Test arena when they were down here in New Zealand? Warming up just by playing soccer and having a laugh and kicking the ball around. I really think they need to figure out a way to step back from the abyss and take a look at themselves and go, you know what, we've got 4 games to go now. Let's go out and enjoy playing our cricket, and maybe some of the results start to come our way from there.
Yeah, absolutely. What impressed you about Sri Lanka through the course of the game, Baldy?
Well, things that impressed me about Sri Lanka generally in this World Cup has been the form of Nissanka up the top. He didn't get the rewards today. They went to others. But I think the fact that he gives them plenty of swing early on in their bowling innings reminds me a bit of a vintage Trent Bolt. Not quite as on the same level as Bumrah in terms of getting seam and swing, but he's always been impressive for me. But it was that kind of all-round bowling performance from Sri Lanka. You have a look down their scorecard, wickets from everyone. Lahiru Kumara came in and got the chocolates today. But I think it's, Madhushankar up the top. Rajita's bowled pretty well. You have a look at Thikshana, 8 overs for 21, just went at 2s. Angelo Matthews went at 2s. So those guys really did a good job of restricting England's vaunted batting lineup, and some other guys got the chocolates as a result.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And look, I guess for England, things could have started even more differently and even worse had Sri Lanka used a review on the first ball of the game. Madhushankar, I think, had Johnny Bairstow trapped on the pad. It was one of those ones that just squeezed, flicked the pad before he squeezed down on it and drove it down the ground for 3. Showed it would have been 3 reds on the review. So England would have got off to an even worse start. But yeah, I think picking up on your point, Baldy, that from a batting perspective, I just don't think the formula's been right. Malan has, looked good over the course of the last 18 months or so, and actually isn't having too bad a tournament from a stats perspective. But he doesn't seem suited to the role to go out and really attack the power play. He gets sort of going in terms of 20 odd balls. Bairstow's not really been able to provide the fireworks that Jason Roy did at the top of the order. And then actually Joe Root's not really looked himself through the course of this tournament. And then I think from an England perspective, they've tried to squeeze in Ben Stokes to the side at the expense probably, we've talked about this a lot, of Harry Brook. He's not really got going either. And I think it's one of those things when you've got an all-rounder of his quality that can't use one of the strings on his bow. I just think it affects his potency from a batting perspective. And then we come into that middle order, which has so long put the icing on the cake of the starts that the likes of Roy and Bairstow and Root and Butler have got. And they just really haven't come, to the party. Liam Livingstone, Moeen Ali, Chris Wokes, terrible tournament from a personal perspective, continued today with a duck. Good catch by Samawickarama at points. And then, look, they were never going to get back in the game from there. Took a couple of early wickets with David Willey's swing. But again, David Willey's only going to, really knock the cream off the top with that very, very new Kookaburra. Once it stops swinging, I don't think he looks quite as potent. So whilst I've been critical of that bowling lineup, Bordy, they didn't have a lot to work with today.
No, you're right.
Yeah, despite the fact that probably when you look down that lineup, and particularly when you compare that lineup to even Australia, that's harsh on Australia. But if you look at Australia's lineup, where you've got Hazelwood, Cummins, Stark, Zampa, and then some bits and pieces from Mitch Marsh or Maxwell. You look down this England lineup, Wokes, Willey, Livingstone, a bit of a waning moon in Adil Rashid, and then Mark Wood, who again I think only came on in the 11th over, and by then it was pretty much all over anyway.
Yeah, they've really missed Joe Root in that middle order for England, haven't they?
Yeah.
Because the explosiveness bats around a guy who can get them from overs 11 to 40. And unfortunately for Joe Root, he just hasn't found success and consistency in this World Cup. And I think that really has hampered England's ability to be explosive throughout that 50 overs. We know that they attack all the way through, but they really do need either Malan or Root or both to bat a long innings through the middle overs in particular, to give them some impetus going into the last 10, 15 overs, 3 down, where England could score 140, 150 off the last 10 overs if they can put themselves in that position. Unfortunately, the combination of Malan, Root, Stokes, Butler can't get them there at the moment, can't get them to 40 overs, 3 down. And that's been the challenge for, guys that are unused to having to bat for long periods or to carry an innings, having to perform a task that is unfamiliar to them, certainly over the last 8 years. I think it's a case of, this might be the last time we see some of these England players in their white ball setup in ODI cricket. And it would be a real shame for them to go out in this fashion, because there are some quality cricketers in that lineup that have just underperformed with the bat at the moment. And then that affects their performance with the ball. As you say, their top order, Wokes in particular, has underperformed so far in this World Cup by his standards, and I think the standards that England would set for him. And from there, it's a case of, there's no momentum for England to be able to get Adil Rashid on the front foot bowling attacking leggies, to get Mo Ali bowling attacking off breaks to try and take wickets through those middle overs. They're on the back foot and they're having to manufacture trying to get back into these contests. And even against Sri Lanka, who haven't performed particularly well to date in this World Cup, the last 2 games notwithstanding, Sri Lanka's batters, who I think have actually been good. We need to give praise to Nissanka, who's got 4 half centuries in this World Cup. Samawickarama looks like a good cricketer. Raj identified him a couple of episodes ago as being one to watch. So these guys are really starting to get what Raj would call a bit of momentum through the middle of this World Cup period.
Yeah, look, Bordy, absolutely. We talked about those 2 relatively early wickets for England, Pereira, Mendes falling to David Willey. But yes, Nissanka and Samawickarama, batted really, really well and iced the game. I'm sure there were a few nerves in that Sri Lanka dugout when England, did take a couple of wickets, because I think as poor as England have been, I don't think teams will write them off, and they might have just thought, well, hold on. Could this be a low scoring nail biter? Obviously wasn't with the way that Samawickarama and Nissanka iced the game. I think in closing for me that, and it's a really easy thing to say, but I think from a summary perspective, England's side looks a good T20 side. I just don't think that they can stretch to the 50 over format, and I think I don't think necessarily we can use any excuses around not having played a massive amount of the format since the 2019 World Cup, because all teams have been in a similar scenario with limited bilateral opportunities to play ODIs, and domestically again. I don't know the stats. I'm pretty sure that Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli haven't played too much provincial one-day cricket for their state sides, and I'm pretty sure that I forget the name of the tournament in Australia now. Is it the Ford Ranger Cup or something like that? The 50
It's
over
something, sponsors to be named, but yes.
Yeah. But again, I can't see that David Warner, Steve Smith, Labuschagne, Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, Zampa have played too much provincial 50 over cricket as well. Let's look forward though to the fixtures that come in thick and fast. We got Pakistan, Pakistan, South Africa. I think is the game today. Sri Lanka have probably just about got themselves back in contention in the table as well. And then we've got Australia, New Zealand coming up, double header on Saturday, Bangladesh, Netherlands, the other game. What does this do? What does this game do you think, to permutations? It probably sort of suggests that Sri Lanka might just be able to get themselves back in the running.
Yeah, so let's take the Sri Lanka game. They've got Afghanistan on October 30. They can build a bit of momentum in their tournament if they can go back to back to back, and all of a sudden, from 0-3, they're now 3-3, and they're starting to build the same kind of run towards the semi-finals that we kind of expected England to build even after that loss to Afghanistan. I think the games tonight and tomorrow, you'd mentioned South Africa against Pakistan, Australia and New Zealand. I think that will sort the wheat from the chaff in terms of the top of that table, chasing India on the road to the semi-finals. We'll see what South Africa and Pakistan have got to offer in a game that means a lot. Pakistan have now lost 3 on the bounce. They've lost to India and Australia, which is possibly as expected, but they've also lost to Afghanistan. So if Pakistan have hopes, dreams, aspirations to play semi-finals cricket, they're going to need to right the ship against South Africa. South Africa can stamp their authority on this tournament as a contender alongside India with a win tonight. And Australia, New Zealand, we know that's going to be a close game. But for Australia, they don't really want to drop a third game in 6 times of asking and be up against potentially Sri Lanka, Pakistan, even maybe Afghanistan. If they pull off a win, will be 3-3. So we don't want to see, from an Australian perspective, a contested logjam for spots 4 through 6, because then it comes down to run rate, and that could be a bit of a lottery.
Yeah. India sitting pretty at the top of the table, obviously, Bordy. Can you see them going through this tournament unbeaten?
I certainly can see them going through unbeaten. If you look at the draw that they've got England that are in a world of hurt at the moment. They're going to spend a couple of days in the room of mirrors, and they've got to bounce back pretty quickly because that game is on October 29, so it's only 2 or 3 days away. Then they've got Sri Lanka, who they routed in the Asia Cup final. They've got South Africa, which promises now to be a pretty juicy encounter on November the 5th. And then they finish their tournament with a game against the Netherlands that you'd expect them to beat the Netherlands and beat them comfortably. So there's every chance that India can run the slate. Of course, we saw England lose 3 games in the 2019 version of the World Cup and lift the trophy. So, winning everything in the pool games is not a formula for guaranteed success. But they certainly look like the side that has the most complete package on both sides of the ball. As Raj said a couple of podcasts ago, really they only need to fire at the moment with one side of the ball or the other to take away the chocolates. So it's going to have to be a complete performance for another team to knock them off in the group stage or indeed in the semi-finals. But pressure can do funny things to cricket sides.
Absolutely. Bordy, I think we've spoken enough, and we very rarely take our own advice when that happens and end the podcast. So I think it is a good time for us to do so for a change. We will, of course, be back tomorrow with a wrap-up of that, what could be a pretty important game in the context of the tournament, South Africa, Pakistan. And then over the weekend, of course, we'll cover that double header on Saturday, and then, as you mentioned as well, the India-England game at Lucknow on Sunday night. We do want to ask a quick favour. If you are enjoying the podcast, either in its audio form or on YouTube, please not only give us a like and a subscribe, but maybe recommend the podcast to a friend, cricket teammate or colleague, and ask them to do likewise. We are growing our subscriber base quite nicely through the course of this World Cup, and would like to continue to do so. It gives us the ability to bring you more and more content. But for now, it is going to be, I was going to say again, good night and good bless, but it's not good night. It's good morning and good bless from us here in Auckland. And we'll see you on the next edition of the Top Order Podcast Cricket World Cup review. See you soon.